Zooey Mama, how's it going, everybody? Today we are looking at Ajax, a news card coming to Marvel Snap. So I'm going to give my thoughts on this card, let you know whether or not I think he's going to be worth the tokens or the spotlight keys, if he's going to be worth picking up and you should buy him, or if he's a bit of a bust. Okay, so I'm going to give my ratings on him, talk about his best synergies, give you 3 deck ideas that you can play right away when Ajax comes out, talk about the good and the bad, and just my overall ratings. So to start off, first of all, elephant in the room, Ajax now is 7 power. Okay, when the season started, he was a 5/5. He was officially announced as a 5-cost, 5-powered card. Second Dinner has just told us that he will be releasing with 2 additional power. Okay, so he's going to be a 5/7, but he's still coming to Spotlights on July 16th alongside Darkhawk and Beta Ray Bill. And we're going to look at the Spotlight cache later, but these variants are gorgeous. Okay, Ajax, 5-cost, 7 power with the ongoing ability plus 1 power for each card in play that can be on your side of the board and or your opponent's side of the board that's afflicted with negative power. Okay, so any cards that are hit with negative power effects that can come from like Scorpion, Hazmat, Evolved, High Evolutionary, Evolved, Cyclops, the Thing, all that good stuff. As long as your opponent isn't playing Luke Cage to counteract that affliction, any card that's afflicted, even if it's your own cards, Ajax is getting +1 for each. Okay, now it doesn't matter how afflicted they are. If cards are afflicted by -2 power, Ajax is still getting +1. Okay, he's counting the number of cards afflicted. He's not counting the total amount of power that's afflicted. So let's talk about his best synergies. So as I mentioned, Ajax just fits perfectly with a card like Hazmat. Okay, now Hazmat is applying negative power to everything on the board. And so it's going to hit your opponent's cards and your own, and those are all going to power up Ajax. Now you may choose to play your own Luke Cage, which would bring your cards back to their normal power. Ajax would lose that power bonus though. Remember that he's ongoing, not on a reel. So if you end up playing Luke Cage after you play Ajax, Luke Cage will make him lose that power bonus, but the rest of your cards get it back. It's basically a net 0, but Hazmat hitting everything. Obvious, great synergy here. Next up, as I mentioned, High Evolutionary. High Evolutionary decks, some of them already are running, this kind of Toxic or Affliction package, where you do try to discount your Abomination, and so now you have another thing in there that works with Affliction if you put in Ajax. And lastly is Rogue. Okay, Ajax hates Luke Cage. If your opponent is playing Luke Cage, your Ajax is very, very sad because he's not getting any additional power. So you might want to have Rogue in there to steal your opponent's Luke Cage's ability away. You could run Enchantress as well, but that's a bit risky because Ajax himself is ongoing. So if they play Luke Cage in the same lane, that's going to kind of nullify things. In terms of locations that are very nice, these are some common locations here. Necrotia or any locations that give negative power to cards are just awesome. Okay, that's just giving you free power to Ajax without you even having to hit your opponent's cards with Affliction. And then something like Central Park, Savage Land, Ninja Academy, anything that's adding token cards to the board is giving your opponent more cards. That's good, okay, because you have more cards to hit with that negative afflicted power. To talk about some things that counter Ajax, as I mentioned, Luke Cage is an insanely hard counter. Okay, he doesn't just softly counter Ajax. It's not just a little bit. No, he completely shuts Ajax down. If your opponent is running Luke Cage and you're playing an Affliction deck, you're in for a tough time. Okay, that's just the honest truth of it. Next up is a deck like Annihilus or any kind of junk package. So one point is, yeah, you could afflict their cards, and if they go to negative power, they send them over to you. But the most annoying part is that these junk or clog decks, they just don't have that many cards on their side of the board, right? Because they're sending you cards. They might be sending you Goblins, the Hood, Sentry's Void. So they just don't have many targets on their side of the board because they're already focused on putting negative power on your side of the board. So there's just not great value there. And it's also countered by Rogue, okay? Now I mentioned before how you want to use Rogue to steal your opponent's Luke Cage. So it's going to feel bad if your opponent has Luke Cage. But it's going to feel worse if you play Luke Cage, and then your opponent plays Rogue to steal your Luke Cage, okay? Right now, we are seeing a lot of Loki decks. We're seeing a lot of Loki Arishem decks. They're running Rogue. They're running Enchantress. If you have your Luke Cage out there, they might steal it. And if they steal your Luke Cage, your Ajax now doesn't power up from it, okay? And it puts you in a really tough spot. So you may even want to not run your own Luke Cage if you're running Ajax, because you don't want to give that over to your opponent. Now let's look at the good and the bad for Ajax. First up, he's got a high power ceiling, okay? He can get really big, right? If your opponent just has like 8 cards on their side of the board, he now has 15 power, okay? If you afflicted all of them with some negative power, that's nice. Now his base power, maybe you don't afflict them or they do play Luke Cage or something, he still has 7 power as a base. And when you look at cards like Legion, Cersei, Blink, they're 5/7s. Okay, they're also doing other things though that essentially gives them more power. But as a base, you know, this isn't bad, okay? And so this is where Second Dinner just buffed him. He was a 5/5, now he's a 5/7. So if he doesn't pop off, if Second Dinner's expecting everyone's playing Luke Cage, he's not as bad, okay? You're not that far behind now. He obviously has some homes like ongoing shells, just, you know, full ongoing. He's ongoing himself. You could do him with toxic affliction shells, whether that involves ongoing or involves Sarah or high evo. So some cards when they come out, it's like, what do I play this in, right? And it's hard for some players. You're just trying to figure out where it works. You might lose a lot, lose some cubes, lose some ranks while you're figuring it out. For Ajax, he's got some obvious homes. He has a theme. Whether he's great in those homes is, you know, a different story, but it's going to be easy to kind of pick him up and try him out, and that's nice. And then with the setup, he is ongoing, okay? He's not on reveal, so you don't have to afflict the cards first, and that's very important. You could play him on turn 5, and then on turn 6, you know, you play Wong plus Hazmat or something, okay? And it's hitting just your opponent's cards if you have your Luke Cage, or if you don't have Luke Cage, it's hitting all the cards on the board, and Ajax absorbs all that power, even though you played him first, okay? But on turn 5, if he only has 7 power, he can't die to Shang-Chi. And if your opponent has priority on turn 6, even if Ajax ends up at like 15 or 20 power, he's never dying to Shang-Chi because he powered up later. So that's pretty interesting. That's pretty helpful. In terms of the bad, well, he just got buffed 2 power. Why did he just get buffed 2 power? Okay, the season already started. It was official that Ajax was a 5/5, and now he's getting the Makari treatment, which is after the season starts, but before the card's release, it's getting buffed. And the thought with Makari was really bad at a 3/3, so they made her 3/4. Now she's okay. Well, Second Dinner is basically telling us that Ajax as a 5/5 sucked. He was bad. He was not worth it at all, okay? Even though it's a decent spotlight week, no one was going to pick up Ajax, is what they're worried about. So if you give any card plus 2 power, it makes it a good amount better. But does it make it good yet? Like, does Ajax go from sucking to being okay? Or does it go from sucking to being good? I mean, where is it? And again, he gets completely negated by Luke Cage. There are not many cards that have such like a hard counter. They just get completely shut off by something, so that's tough. It's awkward for your own Luke Cage. If you're protecting your own cards, Ajax doesn't power up from them. And so you kind of decide, like, do I want to go wide? Or do I want to take that power away and have it all go to Ajax? You're worried about your opponent turning off or stealing your own Luke Cage. It's kind of weird, but maybe it's good. You maybe just don't play Luke Cage and you don't need it with Hazmat anymore. He's a 5-cost card. Okay, that's really expensive. It's hard to play a 5-cost plus something else that matters on turn 6. Like, play a second card, basically just 1 energy left. But he's not going to be consistently as big as like Blob, right? Or even like a Red Hulk. And so he might sometimes come down on turn 6, but he's not a turn 6 card. And this is similar to Gilgamesh, where it's like, yeah, it can get big, but you're often playing it on the final turn. And why wouldn't you just play Blob or Red Hulk or something that's always just really big, something that you don't need to work for? I mean, we've got other 5-costs in the game. We've got Ronin. We've got Devil Dino. They all get really big too. They don't see that much play. Okay, Darkhawk is the one that does see play because he gets powered up by giving your opponent rocks. Especially right now with Arishem, he gets powered up to the extreme. But there's a lot of 5-costs that get big power in it. It just doesn't matter that much. So it's honestly a bad cost for him. My guess was as a 5/5, he wasn't bad because of the 5 power. he's bad because of the 5 cost, okay? And this is just my friendly reminder that if you have not already, to give this video a like, hit that thumbs up, and subscribe to the channel if you have not already, because we cover every single new card release in Marvel Snap to help you plan out your resources. Now to talk about Ajax's floor and ceiling. This is him at his reasonable worst and reasonable best. Well, the reasonable worst is that your opponent has Luke Cage. Like, that's going to happen. It's going to happen a lot, especially week 1 when Ajax releases. And then later on in the season, we have Cassandra Nova, who also steals power from cards, so she's afflicting them. If there are metas where there's a ton of affliction or toxic stuff going around, Luke Cage becomes more popular. And when Luke Cage becomes more popular, Ajax is just a 5/7. Okay, so that's his floor. You know, it's not horrible. 7 power is decent. Again, Second Tender did just raise his floor, I think for this very reason. But it's not competitive. You would never try to do this. If he's 5/7 consistently, you're not playing him at all. In terms of his ceiling, well, technically, your opponent does have 12 card spaces on their side of the board. He could get plus 12 power. That puts him at a 5/19. Okay, and this is obviously without help from like locations like Onslaught Citadel, stuff that's buffing ongoings, right? We're not counting that kind of one-off scenario. He could get bigger if you let your own cards get hit. Let's say you played Hazmat and hit all your opponent's cards, but you also let Hazmat hit your cards and you're not playing Luke Cage. That would power up Ajax more, but it means your other cards are losing power, right? So it's a net 0 gain. If you take 10 power away from your other cards and give 10 to Ajax, that's a net gain of 0. You're just shifting where the power is located. Is it going wide across the board, or is it going big on one single lane with Ajax? But realistically, hitting all cards on your opponent's side of the board, if they had priority, they filled their board, there are a lot of decks that do fill up every space by the end of the game, he's like a 5/19. That is big. Okay, that is a very big ceiling. It would be overpowered if he hit 5/19 every single game. Yeah, that is nuts. Okay, that's very strong. That's going to be bigger than most of your 6-cost cards. But where is he on average? Where does Ajax usually fall? Because, you know, sometimes maybe your opponent does go to fill up the board, but maybe you have priority. So your card reveals first, right? Your Wong, Hazmat, whatever reveals first. Sometimes they just don't fill up the board. They're not playing one of those decks. Well, I think you can assume he's going to hit at least 8 different things, right? I mean, assuming your opponent plays 8 cards, that's not too many. That's definitely very possible. They're playing like 8, 9 cards. And you have some turns to hit them with maybe Hazmat. Maybe you hit some stuff with Scorpion or, you know, just evolved Cyclops or something. And so in that case, it's like a 5/15, which again, that's good. But, I mean, Gilgamesh does that too. In Gilgamesh, you're buffing up your own cards. And while Ajax is a bit different because he's ongoing, so, you know, you can play him first and then play your Affliction later, whereas Gilgamesh, you have to buff up your stuff first and then play Gilgamesh. That also means it's very, very telegraphed for your opponent, okay? If your opponent hasn't been hit with much Affliction, you haven't, you know, been hitting their cards down, and they see you play Ajax on turn 5, they know you're about to play Hazmat or something on turn 6. You're going to go Wong Hazmat or Hazmat something else. And if they can't beat that, or if they're weak to that, they're just going to retreat. So you might win, but you're not winning many cubes, okay? It's so telegraphed. And then, of course, some metas have too much Luke. And if you're in a meta with too much Luke, Ajax's average drops significantly. You may find like every other game, he's just a 5/7, and that's going to feel like crap. So the first deck list that I've put together for Ajax is this High Evo Affliction. Now, High Evolutionary himself did just get a buff. He's now a 4/6. Okay, he got +2 power. Ajax got +2 power before he released. And we don't have Luke Cage in here, okay? And so what's nice here is we do have Hazmat. Hazmat may hit some of our cards, but High Evo, you don't really fill your board, right? You're not playing all these cards. You're playing a couple big pieces, letting them power up, letting them hit your opponents down. So Hazmat can buff up Ajax, Scorpion can buff up Ajax, Cyclops can do the same thing, so can the Thing. They all buff up Ajax and they all discount Abomination. So it's a really nice pairing where Ajax gets more power and Abomination comes down at a cheaper cost. Now White Widow, if your opponent fills the location, that's not going to power up Ajax, but it will discount Abomination if you played him before they filled that location. And then we do have Rogue in here. If your opponent's playing Luke Cage, you want to save your Rogue to take out that Luke. Next up, I've put Ajax in this Toxic Ongoing Control list. This is a deck I really like. I've played it a good amount. It's just fun, okay? I really love ongoing style decks where you just have a ton of ongoings and you can power them up with Spectrum. But here we've got some shenanigans. I mean, you can play Nebula far off in a different lane, and then in a single lane, play Mojo into Jean Grey, force your opponent to play there. You can slap down Man-Thing, apply some negative power. You can slap down US Agent, apply some negative power. We've got Cosmo. If we want to protect some of our own cards or play Cosmo and Jean Grey, we can protect our Luke Cage. And then we've got Ajax, and he's going to power up whenever, US Agent is hitting cards down, whenever Man-Thing is hitting cards down, and then again, the final turn, we can slap down a Spectrum, power up all of these ongoing cards, and just have a really strong looking board. And lastly, I've got a Toxic Sarah deck. Now, this deck I really like for multiple reasons. First of all, I'm a big fan of Invisible Woman, and whenever Alioth isn't too prominent in the meta, Invisible Woman can add a lot of value, okay? Because here, we can hide our Hazmat behind her. We can hide our Maximus behind her. We can hide the Wong behind her, okay? So we're looking to add power to the board as the turns go on, but really turn 5, slap down Sarah. If we don't have Sarah, you can just go Ajax into turn 6 Wong plus Rogue. Maybe you can hide the combo. If you did get Invisible Woman down, you play Ajax behind her so your opponent doesn't see the Ajax telegraphing the Hazmat. But you can also get Sarah down. You can do like a turn 6 Wong plus Hazmat plus Luke Cage, right? Just add good power to the board. Of course, we've got Shang-Chi in here, and we have Rogue. Again, I think if you're playing Ajax, you really want a Rogue because you're really, really worried about your opponent playing Luke Cage. So to look at this Spotlight Week, from July 16th to 23rd, we have Ajax, Darkhawk, and Bennett Ray Bill in Spotlights. For token value, it's good. This is the standard. You've got the new card, which is Series 5, and then you do one existing Series 5 card. In this case, it's Bennett Ray Bill, alongside an existing Series 4 card. In this case, it's Darkhawk. This is the standard. This is decent. In terms of being competitive, I'm not looking at Ajax much here because he's new. We technically don't know. So more looking at Darkhawk and Bennett Ray Bill. Bennett Ray Bill's okay. Darkhawk is amazing. Okay, Darkhawk is basically always tier 1 in terms of power. He's even been nerfed many a time. Still good. Still great. Especially right now with Arishem in the meta. Darkhawk literally gets like 30 plus power even if you don't shuffle many rocks into your opponent's deck. I mean, it's absolutely nuts. So it is good for competitive play. Again, Bennett Ray Bill, he's not crazy, but he's not bad. You can make him work. He's really fun too. So if you want to just play him a lot, you can still be competitive, still win some games while having a lot of fun with the Hammer Boy. Now, in terms of the variants, oh my goodness, look at these. These are incredible, okay? Now, art is subjective. Everyone has different tastes, but you cannot look at these variants and tell me they're not amazing. This is the best set of looking variants for the entire season, no doubt. So for my final thoughts and ratings of Ajax himself, in terms of being fun, he's okay. He's not incredible. He's not just a boring stat stick, because you do kind of got to play around with him, right? It's going to be kind of interesting. Do you play him on turn 5? Let your opponent know what's coming and then hit him with it anyways. Do you do Affliction early and save him for turn 6? Are you going to hit your own cards with Affliction and not play Luke Cage to let him power up more? Or do you first have him power up and then play Luke Cage to disperse the power, maybe even dodging a Shang-Chi that way? I mean, there's some interesting things you can do, so he's a bit better than your standard stat stick, although he is just still a big power card, okay? In terms of being flexible, no, he doesn't have good flexibility. You need to play him in an Affliction deck. I mean, his ability literally has the word afflicted in it, and there are just not that many Affliction decks out there, okay? The list I showed you here, you're going to see a lot of that from other people. You're going to see a ton of high Evo decks. You might see some, Toxic Surfer decks. Maybe he's got Hazmat and stuff. I think he's too expensive for Surfer, but you might see people trying that. You'll probably see some Sarah decks. You'll definitely see some Toxic Ongoing like I showed. I mean, he has some obvious homes, but he doesn't have too many homes in general. right? His obvious homes, I really believe, are his main homes. And past that, he's just not going to see any play in other types of decks or archetypes. In terms of being competitive, I think he's okay. He's really tough. He was 5 power, so we know he was bad because Second Dinner already buffed him before release. So he was bad. Does the +2 power make him okay, or does it make him good? That's the question. That's what we need to ask ourselves if we're thinking about buying this card. Is he good now? So my thought is he's just okay, that you can use him. He will add some value, but he's not carrying any decks. He's not carrying any archetypes. You can still play those archetypes if you don't own Ajax. He can be replaced with other cards. You can do different things, okay? I think he might be kind of interesting, kind of fun to play, but I don't think he's going to be needed. My recommendation is to wait and see. Don't pick him up right away, okay? My recommendation is that he might be a bit of a bust even with his new stat line of 7 power. I think the 5 cost is asking too much. You need to be really, really good and competitive to be a 5 cost card that takes a spot in a deck, right? Blink and Cersei do something really crazy. They energy cheat, and Ajax isn't cheating in any way. He can get big power. He's not cheating out on energy or anything. I mean, he's just not doing that. Even the decks where you afflict cards, if Ajax gets really powerful, that means you hit your opponent's cards with a bunch of affliction. You're probably already winning, okay? If you hit all their cards with a bunch of minus power, you might already be winning. And so my thought is wait and see, okay? I don't think it's going to be worth it. I could be wrong, obviously, but give it a couple days, maybe wait till the weekend, see what people are playing, see if these toxic decks do good. It might be hard to tell because at first you'll see a lot of Luke Cage, so he's actually going to seem worse than he really is, okay? The first week he's going to seem worse. But give it some time. Think about it before committing your resources. So those are my thoughts on Ajax. I still do think he's probably one of the weaker cards this season, even as a 5/7. But let me know what you think of him. Let me know if you think of any great synergies that I didn't mention in this video, great combos or deck ideas, and just what you think of him. Is he going to be good? Do you think he's going to be bad? Let me know your predictions in the comments down below. And until then, stay positive. I'll see you next time.